Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays with Harbinder Narula by BW Wellbeing World. My guest today is Mukesh Bansal, a computer engineer from IIT Kanpur, who after spending few years working with startups in the US came back and founded Myntra. He went on to head e-commerce for Flipkart and then finally co-founded Cure.Fit, a healthcare brand trying to build a next-gen healthcare platform. He recently authored a book called Hacking Health, and this book is based on his own personal experiences related to health. Let's speak to Mukesh to find out more about his journey and what tips he has for us in his book, Hacking Health. Let me first begin with a very basic question because every entrepreneur's journey is filled with roller coaster rides. We all experience ups and downs, and many of the things that we do are an outcome of a purpose which we discovered while we were facing this journey. Right? Can you share a little bit about your own health and professional struggles, your ups and downs in your life?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I think, I've been now around startup environments for almost 24 years. And one thing that's given about startup environment is that no 2 days are alike. And, it's exactly a roller coaster. You get very high highs and very low lows. And they're also very unpredictable. Right. And I think somewhere, just personal commitment and passion for health and fitness has been an integral part of my journey. To just give you a couple of examples, when I moved back to India in 2007, prior to that, I used to be very physically active. For 2 years, almost my workout, etc., nearly stopped. And then the stress of starting a new company in India. I had not worked in India for prior 10 years. So it was, getting to me slowly. I was, starting to put on weight. I felt my focus was, waning. My sleep quality was suffering. I was falling sick very often. So in 2009, I restarted my fitness journey after a 2-year gap. And within 3-4 months, I could see that my energy levels have gone up. I was able to deal with the stressful situations better. I was able to sleep better. And then, I really realized that how critical fitness is. And then later also, it came to a point in my Myntra journey sometime when I'll be really stressed. I will basically cancel my meetings during the day for 2-3 hours, go back home, do a workout or run on a treadmill and come back and I'll feel, very energized and focused. And I think there's been a lot of highs and lows. I mean, the pandemic is again a great example. So for us, Cure.Fit, we run the largest gym chain in the country, but the business is offline. So when the wave 1 and 2 and 3 happened, all our business was shut down. We went from 100 to 0 overnight. It was very stressful, financially, not responsible about the company employees, managing shareholders. So in those days, really, I was meditating multiple times a day. I got into fortunate meditation habit and being able to meditate, again, continue my fitness journey, helped me, I think, deal with that whole situation in a more even keel manner. So I definitely attribute, I've had some kind of longevity in entrepreneurial space, 15 years doing my own companies, prior 10 years working on other startups. And I think without this investment in health and fitness, I probably would have struggled in this journey.
So, Mukesh, you went through a viral meningitis in the US, right?
Right.
What were the learnings? What changed after this incident?
Yeah, right.
And, how did your life change post that?
It was very unexpected. I was in the transition phase when I was setting up Myntra. So what I used to do is in the early part, I used to come to India every 3 weeks. And then 4th week, I'll go back to US because I still had the setup there. I still transitioning out of my prior job and all of that. And doing that, the 2-way 24-hour journey non-stop with barely any sleep. What happened after, doing it 5-6 times, when I reached US, I started feeling like very strange, not able to look into light, throbbing headache, low energy, ended up going to energy and, was diagnosed with meningitis. And it was very scary few days because meningitis, depending on what type it is, could potentially very deadly. So I went to nerve-wracking in 2-3 days, finally got out of it. And then, and I was so surprised. And, that I used to think of myself a very healthy person because I used to go to gym, eat healthy and all of that. What happened in retrospect is because of this continuous time zone change, stress levels, and the lack of sleep, my immunity, got highly compromised. And what is meningitis? Basically, you have viral infection, viral somehow penetrates into your brain and spinal cord, and that's what we call meningitis, and that only happens when the immunity is so weak. So I think that was a big eye opener moment for me, where I realized that just doing just stock fitness alone is not enough. I think there's a lot more to health, immunity. It's a full integrated system. And since then, I think I've invested even more heavily in reading everything about it, experiment with a lot of different regimes, figure out what works, what doesn't work, realize that health and fitness is a lot more personal in nature. There is no one size fits all kind of situation. It also changes, like what worked for me in my 20s is not going to work for me now in my 40s. So it's a continuously evolving space. Science itself is moving. Like science has changed so much in the last 20 years. So I think I've tried to keep pace with it, but it was a great wake up call for me as one more trigger to look into health very seriously. And maybe that has also played a role in me eventually starting a health company.
So, I understand that, what you went through in your real life journey prompted you to invest professionally also into health business. But what prompted you to write this book?
Yeah, I think see the after having done all these experiments, my own journey in health and fitness, and also experience of building Cure.Fit, I felt that I have developed a much deeper understanding of health. Both as a intellectually through reading an expert, personally by experimenting, and professionally by building Cure.Fit. And I felt that the general understanding of health is very sketchy. There are a lot of myths and fads and superficial understanding. So I wanted to communicate everything I've learned in a format where anyone who is curious to learn what does the full journey of health look like, what does modern science has to say, even how does the current understanding of a health evolve. How do we know which fats are good and which fats are not good for us? For example, which workout regimes work? What happens when you work out regularly, right? How does mental health work? What is so science of it, history of it, and then the practical tools. What do I do in my life to pursue? Right? Everyone is very busy, time constraint. The book is in some ways, Bible of sorts, where everything about health, from the evolution of health understanding, what modern science has to say, what we know, what we don't know, and also what ancient wisdom has to say, because a lot of things have been especially in Indian culture, have been incorporated in our rituals and practices that people have at home. Unfortunately, a lot of them coincides with what modern science has to say. So I wanted to bring all of it in a one easy to understand format, and that's what led to me writing this book.
Lovely. So, Mukesh, since you mentioned that you wanted to break the myths around health, in this book, as a myth breaker, do you think fad diets and superfoods really exist? Does weight loss pills and powders that that we are finding in the industry actually work in the long run? What is your opinion on this?
No, I feel I think it's a more nuanced answer, Harbinder. At some level, I think health, I feel, is both very simple and very complex. Simple, there are few things if people do. For example, I summarize in the book in one sentence, which is eat less, sleep more, and always move. So that's all, at a very high level. But within that, there are many different ways to do that. There are different kind of diet patterns you can follow. There's so much variety available in terms of how you incorporate movement in your life. And my understanding, almost all of it works, right? It's as long as you're physically active and moving your body. Similarly, food wise, if you're eating relatively less, I think all of us end up eating just too much. We're eating too frequently. That leads to a lot of issues. I think a lot of fad diets, they tend to be very one dimensional, and they promise that you do one thing, everything is solved. I don't think health works that way. It's a very holistic system, and I think by and large, if people eat locally, seasonally, more just green foods and so on, it's a more balanced diet. Approach is much more practical and sustainable long term. I think weight loss also is very complicated. I think there are some of these diets and solutions which can create a short term weight loss, but almost everybody rebounds back and they regain their weight, because there is something called set point theory. Our bodies have a natural equilibrium, which is a reflection of lifestyle. So if my lifestyle does not change, but through a hack I somehow drop 5 kg, my body will wait for the first opportunity to regain it back, unless I start changing my lifestyle and retrain my body for a different weight, which takes much longer time period. So I think that's what I'm trying to communicate in the book, that really understand how does now weight. I'll give you just one example. See, when people try to lose weight, basically they're trying to lose fat, right? Now, why does even fat exist in our body? So fat is an energy storage in the our evolutionary biology. All this mechanism evolved that it was not guaranteed to find food every day. Some days you find food, some day you don't. So we have this fat storage. So when we have more food, we eat more, store it as a fat. When we don't find food, then the body consumes stored fat as energy. It's a great mechanism to survive. Now in modern diet, what happens is we are eating continuously. So body does not get an opportunity to burn fat for fuel. And therefore, all the fat metabolism over a period of time goes for a toss. So that even if we don't eat for 6 hours, we start feeling, hungry, hangry, as people call it, right? Agitated. And because body is not able to convert the stored fat into energy, but through different, fasting regimes, you can retrain your body to learn how to burn fat for fuel. And then if you fast, nothing happens. Like, for example, now I can easily fast for 24 hours. I don't feel a thing. In fact, I feel even more energetic because all of us carry enough, fat in our body to provide food for even up to 2 weeks. But the problem is, so these things, fat diets can't solve for it. You have to really reprogram your body through fundamental lifestyle changes.
That's very interesting. But making these fundamental changes needs to become a habit, because a lot of us read books, a lot of us speak to people, we get inspired, we begin our journey, and very soon, in about a week's time, we let go of it.
Right.
Any tips on how you can turn this fundamental shift to become a habit so that it can become your lifestyle? Right. Yeah. How did it happen with you?
Right. I think the habit is a key word. In the book also, I talk about this a lot. I think people need to understand how to master the ability to either build habits or break habits. The thing is not easy at all. So some of the things that work really well is one is some kind of accountability framework. So for example, when I restarted my fitness journey, I also had a lot of inertia. So what I did was I hired a personal trainer and I asked the person to just show up at 6:30 every day, whether I work out or not. And after some time, I'll start, he will come, he will just sit, have a tea and say, okay, let's just at least, do something, basic floor exercises. And slowly, I felt a lot more accountable towards him. I see that in our gyms also at Cult, that when people who work out together, who come with a buddy, they tend to stay in the gym a lot longer. They are more consistent. What people call this habit stacking, layering one new habit on top of an existing habit. So for example, let's say in the morning, everybody, brushes their teeth. So let's say, start building a habit that every time you brush your teeth, you will also put on your running shoes. It doesn't matter whether you go for running or not. After you put on running shoes, it will be a good reminder, that will become a habit. Every act of brushing your teeth will remind you to, put on your running shoes. And when you put on running shoes, you'll say, okay, let me do something, at least walk inside my room or go down the apartment building and walk, and slowly your habit journey, this habit around working at a particular time can start. Time also matters. I think that if you do something at the same time every day, chance of becoming a habit is much higher versus when you're in different time, the body doesn't get used to it. So that's the other mechanism. But I think creating some kind of accountability mechanism, works the best.
So what I hear is that take those baby steps.
Yeah.
Create consistency and have an accountability partner to keep you motivated and put you in the action.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay. You worked in the tech space. So you had the fashion industry, then you moved into e-commerce, and now you're into healthcare. Do you think the technology and the physical space needs to merge together to become more meaningful? For example, my question is, do you think IoTs work in making you more consistent?
Yeah, I think these days there's a whole, proliferation of this health tech devices, like, smartwatch like this, or there's ring to track your sleep. There are all the smart mattresses, right? And the CGM monitors, continuous glucose monitoring, where you can automatically measure your glucose levels every 5 minutes. I think by and large, these devices are quite helpful because what they are doing is they're educating users about their own health. Our health used to be quite a black box. Something happened in our body. All we know is how we're feeling. We may feel great or we may not feel great, but we don't know exactly why. But what these tracking devices are doing is they're making it very transparent. So you become, so all of us today know more about our cars and scooters than we know our own bodies. But these, tracking devices are bringing the data out and informing you so you can understand how it works. Sometimes it can create a bit of a cognitive overload. So I think people need to approach this with some caution and some restraint, because you can also, you can reverse problem of, looking at all the data and then drawing wrong inferences or getting paranoid about it, or developing, mental health issues as a result, depending on high scores or low scores. So I think it's a very powerful technology, and it's going to get way more powerful. I think, increasingly a lot more AI will also come in. These devices are more sophisticated. We'll be able to measure more about our body. We'll be able to predict, how things will pan out. But people need to approach it intelligently in a very informed manner. Otherwise, you can end up in a little knowledge, a dangerous thing kind of situation.
This is a very interesting point that you brought up, Mukesh. The technology is a very powerful tool, but it has to be used intelligently to
Right.
create the right inferences. Now, when you're talking of technology, it is not just the electronic technology that is there. There's a huge conversation around personalization of medication and treatment, etc. And it is an outcome of genomic testing. In fact,
Right.
very recently, we also had this story about the well-known lead actor who was at the increased, risk of developing Alzheimer's due to genetic predisposition.
Mm.
Now, what do you think the role of genetics is in remaining healthy? It is. I'm not even talking of
Right.
sickness.
Yeah. Right. So I think, so genetics obviously play a very big role. I think all of us inherit, our genetic makeup from, both of our parents, and there could be a predisposition towards certain type of diseases, etc. There could be certain inherent strength and weakness. But I think what modern science has to show, that, genes don't work in isolation. They're very heavily dependent on the environment and conditioning. People call it epigenetic factors. So, which means that, up to 80% of the effect of the genes can be circumvented by lifestyle, which is a great news, which still gives us, we are not slave to our genetic inheritance. I think to a large extent, the power is still in our hands. If you have certain, genetic predisposition, for example, let's say, both my parents are diabetic, like in my case, both my parents are diabetic, right? Which means I am at an increasingly high risk. Therefore, like, it's even more important for me to invest in the healthy lifestyle. But if I do, then my, probability of developing diabetes goes down dramatically. So I think, one is, you don't have to do sophisticated genetic testing. You can just know, just, interview your parents and grandparents about their health history, and maybe it's a prevalent in your family tree. And then basis which I think almost, the so-called lifestyle diseases, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, even mental health to a large extent, the active lifestyle can, and the food, dieting and sleep can play a huge role. So people can manage. I think at this point, all the literature I have seen, all the studies I've seen, I believe to a very significant extent, it's in people's control through, lifestyle intervention. If you're higher disposition, then you probably need to bit more and start early.
So, Mukeshi, in your book, you have quoted the famous father of medicine, Hippocrates.
Right.
And let food be thy medicine. How do you think food can heal a person more than a medicines at some points?
See, what's most interesting is, and it's incredible that even 2000 years ago, these Greeks, and even in fact in Ayurveda also, people had this knowledge. See, ultimately, medicines never heal you, because the healing is done by body. Like, body needs to clean up something, produce new cell. Let's say if you get a cut, right, and then you apply any, medicine, etc., that is preventing infection. But the actual healing, clotting and the creation of new skin is done by body. So all medicines do is they catalyze and accelerate. If there are, pathogens in the body, they may fight it. But the real healing is done by body itself, right? So that's the incredible power of body. Like, right lifestyle, including, right food, can, dramatically enhance that. It's a food for all kind of, nutrients, from macronutrient for energy to micronutrient for, wear and tear, all the, repair work and so on. So by feeding and nourishing our body with the right food and getting right, mindset and mental health, environment, we basically tap into inherent power of body. I think in medicine, placebo effects are very well known, and today they are very deeply scientifically validated. When people believe something will work for them, they end up getting better. So it's very real, right? And so I think the role that diet plays in all of it is ensuring we have the right nutrients, so that without right nutrients, body is just not able to run some natural processes. It's requires those input to function. It's just like how car engine requires fuel and other things, right? The all, so we have all these sophisticated processes which are there, but without, if you have a, let's say, very one dimensional diet, too much of one thing and too little of something else, then everything else which requires those nutrients gets compromised. So generally, eating a balanced diet, seasonal diet, so you expose yourself to a variety of nutrient, and some form of fasting, which also accelerates all the natural cleanup processes within the body, is a good way to turbocharge the healing capabilities within the body.
Right. So, Mukesh, you mentioned that there was a time when you were stressed. You were, and that you would come back, exercise, feel rejuvenated. Many of us, when we are stressed, when we are anxious, we get into binge eating, and binge eating also leads us to eat foods which are, what would you call it, the junk food, which are very comforting at
Right.
that point in time.
Right.
In your experience, how can we create comfort foods which are healthy?
Right. Yeah, I think see, mostly anything which is homemade is generally more healthy. So including something, let's say, there is absolutely no harm in having for a lot of people, aloo paratha may be a comfort food, right? Or let's say dal chawal may be comfort food, right? For me, like homemade food is a huge comfort food. So one is recognizing what are things you enjoyed growing up. It could be as simple as having a tea with bread and butter, right? These things are still dramatically more healthy than all the packaged food, deep fried food that we get outside, so-called, from all the cakes and pastries and samosas and so on, right? So I think those are way more harmful. So I think you can have comfort food, but which is still homemade comfort food. Everybody likes their mom's food, right? That's a huge comfort food. So I would rather tap into that. And the second thing is to do is, if you do it every day, then it's it may be bad for you, right? You can't have a aloo paratha every day, right? But if you indulge in it, once a week, twice a week, it's not going to do any harm. It's still, in some way more wholesome because it's homemade, clean ingredients. You cook in front of you in a healthy oil and so on. But, just I think the biggest, these hidden sugars. So a lot of, packaged food and sodas, they're packed with sugars, right? Those are really bad for you. They play havoc with your insulin levels. They're also very habit forming because we are predisposed to taste of very strong sugar or salt, and these snack food they are almost engineered to um, make us feel that good. When you have one bite of chips, you will have one more and one more. So I would not avoid comfort food. I think comfort food have a role to play. I mean, food should make us feel good. For many people, fruits are also comfort food. Some fruits are, if you look at, mangoes, for example, or chicos, a lot of people find them, delicious, right? For somebody, it could be, I don't know, milk with, Horlicks, could be a comfort food, right? So I think finding those kind of comfort food, which are more healthier, definitely, homemade, and probably closer to, what you grew up eating with, and then just watching out for the quantity.
And also, in your, you talk a lot about sleep. And one thing you mentioned that, when you were leading a corporate lifestyle, you had the lack of sleep.
Right.
Now, a lot of us are facing, a fast-paced lifestyle today. And we are traveling. Of course, traveling has reduced thanks to COVID, when we got used to, teleconferencing, etc. Now, how does someone conquer this issue of lack of sleep, especially
Right.
when you're looking at the millennials today?
Yeah, I think one needs to start by acknowledging that sleep is a one fundamental pillar of a healthy lifestyle and good health. Without good sleep, you cannot have good health. Period. You may get by for a short period of time, but you will pay consequence in the long term. I think that fact itself was not very well known, but fortunately, and this has all happened last 20 years. now we understand, sleep at a very, very granular level, exactly what happens, what processes run, what role the sleep plays in the just all the cognitive functions in boosting immunity. So one is just recognizing that, like a lot of people believe fitness is important. They need to believe sleep is important. Second, I think this, people call it sleep hygiene. So it's, how you go to bed. It's very important, So I think all the sleep experts will tell you that having exposure to blue light, which is there in the tube light or any white light, is pretty bad because it messes up with circadian rhythm. So for example, my home now, I only use yellow light in the evening after 7 p.m. And that too also very, people call those 0 watt bulbs, right? Or so very faint yellow light, because that's a signal to your body that's the evening time, and the that will ensure melatonin level starts to go up and you start to feel naturally sleepy. Second, I think at some point, at least an hour before, you have to cut out devices. These days everyone goes to bed with their phones, and they're staring the phone, which is emitting all this blue light right into your eyes, which is again messing up, so you are not feeling naturally sleep. That's why a lot of people have this what called sleep onset problem. Then generally also setting up your room, which is noise free, light free. Ideally leave your phone outside of your room, so that you get up in the night, you don't have temptation to pick up the phone and look into something, right? And then on top of that, if you can layer some nice wind down habits, for many people it can range from meditation, stretching, journaling. You can listen to some light music. If you can have some nice gratitude practice, where you just think about something you are grateful for that day. I think, and creating that, for me, reading is a big part of my wind down routine. I read for about half an hour. That makes me feel very relaxed. So I think creating a almost engineering what happens 1 to 2 hours before sleep. Having any caffeine after 2 or 3 p.m. is a bad idea, because caffeine half life is 8 hours. So which means if I have caffeine now, like even I'll have at least 50% caffeine in 8 years from now, 8 hours from now, which will be my sleep time. So I think acknowledging sleep is very important, and designing a very good routine around it, I think, can do wonders for people's health.
Lovely, lovely. You in your book you write about the rules of health,
Yeah.
right? What are the top 5 rules that you personally believe these have to be the priority?
Right. I think, one is this use it or lose it, right? And that is a fundamental principle that the body works in. The example I use in the book, if anyone has ever had a fracture and you put a cast on, and after the cast is open, you will see that your arm is noticeably thinner. All the muscle goes away. So what happens is, your brain recognizes these muscles are not being used. So it starts to basically digest it. It consumes those muscle cells for, calories, because the brain doesn't want to carry any extra dead weight. So I think that's a fundamental rule. Like if you want to, if you use your brain actively, through any mentally challenging activity, if your body, whether it's a resistance training or movement, you take your heart rate up. So I think, you have to, that's, I think, one critical role. Second, I think, just, eating less and creating some window of fasting. It does not matter how you do it. It could be, you can align with, your religious beliefs. It could be once a week kind of thing, or it could be that, 16/8 intermittent fasting time. As long as your body goes through some period of not eating, I think it activates a lot. This idea of controlled stress, people call it hormesis. So whenever we apply, controlled stress, example of that is, say, let's say you're lifting a weight. So what happens is, after lifting some weight, after a few repetitions, it causes small micro tears. And then when you're sleeping, the body repairs, and it then repairs some more, like it builds little extra. So you're incrementally stronger, and you keep repeating, you get stronger and stronger, right? If you expose yourself to, heat therapy through sauna or steam, or cold therapy by, cold immersion, ice bath, cryo, etc. All these are example of controlled stress, and controlled stress, triggers growth, because then body's compensatory mechanism kicks in, right? So I think, finding this, like, you need to almost engineer some discomfort in your life. If you keep seeking comfort, that's where these problems happen. We are not using our body, mind. So I think this is probably top 3 for me.
You know what, Mukesh, we are connecting or reconnecting almost after a decade,
right?
And I've seen you in that the aggressive entrepreneurial person. You're a very calm person. I think when I hear you speak right now, you're a very calmer person than what I've seen you a decade ago.
Right.
And you've spoken about meditation and silence in your book.
Right.
Is there a role that meditation and silence has played in your life?
100%. I think I got into meditation in the early days of Cure.Fit when we were starting 2016. I started experimenting with this meditation app like Headspace, Calm, etc. And to be, really honest, I was very skeptical about, meditation as a lifestyle tool. But we were looking into mental health, etc. I tried, but after some time, I could see a change in me. That as you said, I started feeling less stressed, more calm, able to deal with anger in a better manner, and also able to sleep better. And then I looked at variety of meditation techniques, and then that led me to even breathing technique. And in the yoga tradition, one of the first thing they teach you, they call it pranayam, and pranayam itself is hundreds of breathing techniques. There's so many things, and these through trial and error over centuries people have evolved. There is a very strong connect between um, between how you breathe to your overall health. And the reason for that, I think, breathing is our only process in the body which we can do consciously. Like I can, slow breathe and, and so on, or unconsciously. When I'm talking to you, not paying attention, I'm still breathing. At the time, my unconscious mind is controlling it. Like my heart, I can't control, I can't make it beat faster or slower. That is totally purview of unconscious mind, right? But this is one process which is a bridge between conscious thought process and unconscious. And the yoga recognize that and they harness that. So by controlling your breathing, you can activate your energy, or you can calm yourself down depending upon. So I've looked into that. Just stillness, right? I think today all of our lifestyles are that from morning to night we are occupied, if nothing else, and with our phone, which means there is no time for brain to think, make sense of things, process things, let new ideas emerge. So now I try to, I think, find time at least an hour a day where I totally disconnect from everything, kind of activity. And so I think all these things have definitely, helped me feel this overall more centered, as well as I feel, feel more healthier overall.
Mukesh, another thing that you speak of in the book is of being social.
Right.
And in today's day and age, the social has come onto this device. Right. Now, what do you think needs to be done to ensure that social remains beneficial?
Right. I think I have a strong point of view on this, Harbinder. One is that I don't think digital social has any meaning as far as well-being is concerned. It has to be physical, in person, because body language matters a lot, and a lot of big part of communication is non-verbal. Touch matters a lot, right? Whether you shake hand, hug somebody, put your hand around, so or somebody, like, just because we evolved that way. I think most of, again, human evolutionary history is growing, is basically um, being in the wild in a small bands, small tribes, which is very tightly, cohesively knit together, because that increase the odds of survival of that group. And we are by evolution hardwired for seeking that social companionship. I think deep relationships, like have even your 5 deep relationships in your life, within your family, core friends, that is way more powerful than being connected with hundreds of people on social media. I think it may have other benefit in terms of your network, reaching out to people for help, etc. But in terms of well-being, I think you need to have a more analog social network and very deep, meaningful, relationships, which are very nourishing, which creates a safe environment for you to express yourself. You get solidarity, support, people you can lean on, your sense of comfort, security. So I think, and this last thing I'll mention is there is one of the longest study in health is this study by Harvard Medical School, which was started in 1940s, and the study is still running. There is a very popular TED talk also on this. And what they wanted to study is, they enrolled a bunch of Harvard graduates, and they decided to track them there through entire life and see what will be the biggest predictor of longevity. And after the over now 70 years, the single biggest factor is the strength of their social bonds, not professional success, not even fitness or sleep. So I think people who had few very deep social bonds ended up living the longest with the best health span.
Lovely. I think I'm a big believer in in-person meetings and connecting with people, building relationships, bond, be able to speak with someone.
Right.
Uh, Mukesh, one challenge that we are facing with the advent of technology is that there is a lot of information which is available. And the reason I'm saying that it is a challenge is because it's becoming increasingly difficult to differentiate between good information versus uh, incorrect information. You know,
Right.
so how should people judge on the online information which is
Right.
available to them related to well-being, which has got a direct impact on the way they live and how their life
Right.
is going to pan out to be?
I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a huge deluge of both information and misinformation, and it is impossible for anyone to pass through all of that. So my recommendation will be, you first find very trusted source and then process information through that. For example, for me, I follow this podcast. It's called Huberman Labs. So Dr. Andrew Huberman, he's a professor of neuroscience at Stanford, and I believe it's one of the most authentic research-based source of any information related to health. And because not only he talks about what he talks about, but he also quotes all his sources, all the studies. He's also very transparent about what we know works, what we don't know. He does not say, take one thing and everything will be solved in your life. So and there are a lot of such, credible sources on internet. So I would rather, follow that. In my book itself, right, to do this book, we have gone over almost 150 books and a lot of research papers and talked to a lot of experts. On top of that, I have experimented with pretty much everything in my own life, but also a lot of it, through Cure.Fit ecosystem to all the customers who take, services from Cure.Fit on a daily basis. So it's, significantly validated in the field and comprehensively researched. So I think I would encourage people to look for either do you all this on your own or do this research. Don't believe just some self-styled health guru dispensing some those that may be fundamentally right, but they tend to be one size fits all, which can never be true. Health is way more complex and nuanced. So either people can just go with a trusted source, maybe invest in a coach or a nutritionist, or invest a lot of effort to go through a bunch of things and see what the mainstream science has to say. One last thing on this, you can almost never go wrong with go wrong if you go with the ancient wisdom, because what I realized that the practices that will survive many centuries, they're already field tested because they would not have survived thousands of years. So everything, say if you look at in religion practices, prayer is a form of meditation, right? Prayer is a form of gratitude practice, right? Most religion you recommend you get up early in the morning, see sunrise. Huberman also says that get morning sunlight to fix your circadian rhythm. All religious practice have fasting. So I would say, like, if you're really confused, just look back how grandparents and great grandparents lived, and you will not go wrong.
So, Mukesh, before I let you go, my last question to you is uh, everything that we do in our life impacts us and evolves us to be who we are today.
Right.
How has been the experience of writing the book, and has it changed you in any way?
Right. No, absolutely. I think I look at writing almost like a thinking tool. So I like writing because, for any work I'm doing, I feel when I try to write it down on a piece of paper, it helps me organize my thought process, be very clear, create some framework around this. And also my ability to articulate to other people, goes up. So in both my Mintra time and Cure.Fit, I write this weekly newsletter, which goes to all employees. So I'm able to share my thought process. I generally write a lot of documents. So that enabled me to write a book. And in the process of writing a book, we had to study, like both my first book and this one. As I said, we went over, 150 plus books. So my own awareness of, how far the health sciences have come, but also how far we have to go. I realized that for many things, no answers are there. Nobody knows the answer. Anyone who claims the answer, not claiming it right. So I think my awareness has gone up, and also my confidence in being an author has also gone up. Now I've done 2 books. I'm actually working on my 3rd book now. So I really thoroughly enjoy this process, and I think at the end it helps me learn more and also clarify my thought process.
Lovely. So it's been lovely speaking to you, Mukesh. I think your journey as for someone who has worked with startup environment, has done startups, been an entrepreneurial person, gone through the ups and downs, having an impact on your personal life, and now sharing your experience, your learnings with the world through your book. I think it's a brilliant journey. Thank you so much for coming out with this book and sharing your life with others, hoping that it's going to create an impact on their life. I wish you the best for even your third book now.
Thank you, Harbinder. I really appreciate being on this forum. Thanks for inviting me. I greatly enjoyed my conversation. Look forward to being in touch. Thank you.